94,000 stolen Bitcoin worth $3.6 billion were recovered by the US government in early 2022. It was the largest financial seizure in US history. The hunt for the stolen Bitcoin had taken over 4 years, and the thieves were not the typical crypto criminals. It wasn't a sophisticated network of state-sponsored hackers from North Korea or Russia. The perpetrators were actually a young married couple living in a messy apartment in number 75 Wall Street, just a short distance from the offices of one of their investigators. The apartment was raided and feds found $40,000 in cash, an assortment of foreign currencies, hollowed out books, fake passports, 50 tablets, encrypted USB sticks, and a bag labeled burner phone. They found a Bengal cat named Clarissa, and finally, her owners, the cringiest couple on the internet. Heather Rhiannon Morgan was born in 1990 and grew up in a tiny rural town in California called Tehama. It is located over 100 miles north of Sacramento and has a population of just 400 people. In school, Heather didn't have many friends, and she was often teased about her speech impediment. However, she was known for being intelligent and was gifted in maths and science. In high school, she studied Japanese and embarked on an exchange program to Japan. From an early age, she longed to get as far away from her hometown as she could. In 2011, Heather graduated with an economics degree from the University of California, Davis in Sacramento, before moving to Hong Kong and then Cairo, Egypt for her postgraduate studies. She began telling people she was Turkish and that her name was Heather Reyhan. She was described by her former professor and then co-author as a fast learner with a quick mind. It was clear she had a lot of ambition and deliberately surrounded herself with like-minded, successful people. In YouTube videos, Heather talked about her humble origins and revealed that she had been broke and homeless multiple times in her life. In early 2013, Heather moved to Silicon Valley, where her interests shifted away from economics. She landed a job as head of business development at a Middle Eastern gaming startup called Tamatem, which was part of a global business accelerator course called 500 Startups. It was through this intensive 4-month program that Heather would brush shoulders with some of the biggest players in Silicon Valley and meet equally driven and talented entrepreneurs. Founders and employees from 30 tech startups would attend classes and work in their offices for 18 hours a day. Heather stood out at 500 Startups. She was quirky and never shy. She also was just that bit hungrier than her peers and gave the impression that she would do whatever it took to succeed. 3 months into the program, Heather dropped out. Her peers then received some surprising news. Heather was now married and living in Brazil. It turned out she had jumped at the opportunity to work for a Brazilian startup called Pin My Pet and ended up marrying one of the founders, Bruno de Souza. However, the relationship didn't last and she moved back to the Bay Area at the end of 2013, where she reconnected with a fellow 500 Startups alum, Ilya Lichtenstein. Ilya Dutch Lichtenstein was born in 1988 in Russia and moved to a wealthy neighborhood in Chicago with his parents at a young age. He remained a Russian citizen. Like Heather, Ilya excelled academically and was particularly talented in maths and science. He didn't travel as far from home though, graduating with a psychology degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. In 2011, Ilya moved to Silicon Valley and co-founded MixRank, which was a tool that allowed companies to spy on their competitors' online display ads. MixRank was doing well and several notable investors were on board, including Mark Cuban. Heather and Ilya began an on-again, off-again relationship in 2014. By this point, Heather had also founded her own startup, SalesFolk, which helped businesses and individuals write cold email templates. In February, Heather and Ilya traveled to Hong Kong together, flying in first class. According to Ilya's LinkedIn page, he became an advisor at SalesFolk. In January 2015, Ilya opened an account at an unnamed virtual currency exchange referred to as VCE5. Virtual currency exchanges are online businesses that allow customers to trade cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin for other assets including conventional money and other cryptocurrencies. Ilya verified this particular account with his email address, a copy of his California driver's license, and an ID photo. In May 2016, Ilya abruptly left MixRank, his own startup. His employees found this baffling, as the business was growing steadily. 3 months later, Bitfinex, one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges at the time, was hacked, and almost 120,000 bitcoins were stolen. On the 2nd of August 2016, an unknown individual or group located in Hong Kong discovered a flaw in the code of the cryptocurrency exchange website, Bitfinex. In just under 4 hours, 119,754 Bitcoin was stolen, nearly half of Bitfinex's entire inventory, worth about $72 million at the time. As you may know, over the next few years, crypto would explode and the value of Bitcoin would skyrocket. The stolen Bitcoin's value would rise to a staggering $8.3 billion at the peak of the crypto boom in 2021. Immediately after the hack, users reported that the Bitfinex website was broken. Once they were able to access their accounts, many users discovered that their Bitcoins had disappeared from their wallets. 4 days later, Bitfinex announced that the coins were gone and that the losses would be generalized across all accounts at a percentage of about 36%. In layman's terms, every single account holder on Bitfinex would lose 36% of all their money, not just victims of the hack. Then, instead of refunding customers, Bitfinex distributed their own digital token known as BFX. Each token was given a $1 value. As soon as BFX hit the open market, the value plummeted to just 20 cents, and customers were not able to sell them off fast enough to recoup their losses. Before we check back with Heather and Ilya, a quick crash course on crypto. A cryptocurrency is essentially a virtual currency designed to act as money and a form of payment outside the control of any person, group, or entity. In other words, decentralized. But this doesn't mean you can't be completely untraceable when buying or selling with crypto. A blockchain is an open and shared digital ledger where every single crypto transaction is recorded. The data on the blockchain can never be modified or erased and is also viewable by anyone. Crypto is stored in virtual wallets. These wallets and their contents can be viewed on the blockchain, but their owners can remain anonymous, to an extent. The nearly 120,000 Bitcoins that were stolen from Bitfinex were flagged by blockchain analysts. So if the thieves were to spend the coins, they would have to find ways to launder it to ensure their identity remained a secret. Investigators located the wallet that contained the stolen Bitcoin on the blockchain fairly easily, but had a much more difficult time uncovering the owner of the wallet. In 2017, Heather claimed that salesfolk generated $65 million in revenue in the past year, a figure not too far from the amount stolen from Bitfinex. However, former employees told Forbes magazine that that figure was definitely overinflated. Salesfolk apparently only ever had a handful of employees at a time, and their yearly salaries were between only $10,000 and $30,000. Heather and Ilya's relationship became serious when they moved into an apartment on Wall Street together. Their monthly rent was about $6,800. Certainly expensive, but not unheard of in New York City. They appeared to live fairly normal lives for a techie couple in their early 30s. They were career focused and their friends knew they were making good money, but overall they were pretty down to earth. No flashy cars, oversized mansions, or designer bags. They got a Bengal cat named Clarissa, who they sometimes took around the city in a pram. The one thing they did splurge on was travel. They traveled to Malaysia, Hong Kong, Egypt, Vietnam, and Ukraine together, always flying in first class and staying in 5-star hotels. Both Heather and Ilya were very active online. They both had multiple Instagram accounts, shared their thoughts about crypto and the tech industry on Twitter, and posted regular career updates on LinkedIn. Heather also made hundreds of videos posted across YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, but more on those later. Heather wrote columns for Forbes and Inc. magazine. She covered topics like digital marketing, entrepreneurship, and cybersecurity. Heather regularly gave presentations about these topics, but she also had a particular interest in the concept of social engineering.
Social engineering is basically, I hate the term manipulating, but it's getting someone to share information or take an action that they otherwise would not, and oftentimes that involves what's called cognitive bias. So basically using things people are already programmed to do and think to trigger them to do what you want them to do. The media often wants us to think that social engineers are bad people, like hackers. And I do actually believe that the ends justify the means sometimes, but nothing I'm doing, I think my end goals aren't bad or evil. I'm not trying to scam someone out of money or get someone hurt in any way.
In New York, Heather began creating what she called surrealist art, and her hobbies expanded to taxidermy, graphic design, and decorating her clothes and other household items. Meanwhile, Ilya was working on a new startup called NPass, which was building a secure crypto wallet and password management software. Heather became the CEO of NPass, but the company never released anything beyond generic marketing material. Former employees reported that they never did any work and there was never a product that anyone was working on. Ilya was also running several brand new investment companies that seemed to have a roster of employees and clients with names out of a random name generator. In March 2019, Ilya fired all NPass employees and the company disappeared. Around the same time, Heather quit her own company, Salesfolk, citing burnout, family illness, legal threats, and dishonest employees. Neither Heather nor Ilya got full-time jobs after that. Heather had always posted copiously across her social media channels, but she really stepped it up now that she had seemingly no money worries and plenty of free time. She created outlandish characters and made hundreds of videos. She gave herself nicknames like Charlene, Turkish Martha Stewart, the Crocodile of Wall Street, but her most prolific alter ego was Razzlekhan.
Razzlekhan, the Versace better win. Come real far, but don't know where I'm heading. Mother Crocodile of Wall Street.
On the official Razzlekhan website, she describes herself as Genghis Khan, but with more pizzazz. No one knows for sure where this rapper's from. Could be the North African desert, the jungles of Vietnam, or another universe. As Razzlekhan, she danced and rapped in the streets of New York in her homemade be-razzled outfits, showed off her bizarre shopping hauls, decorated animal skulls, and performed extremely cringy comedy skits. In July 2019, Ilya and Heather got engaged. The same way the couple lived their lives, the proposal was over the top. Ilya hired a team of designers and guerrilla marketers to create a multi-channel marketing campaign. He had a Razzlekhan poster printed and plastered around New York City. The idea was to follow the posters to Times Square, where 3 massive billboards were lit up with Heather's face. It cost between $5,000 to $50,000 to rent a Times Square billboard for the day. In August 2019, Heather and Ilya went on a month-long trip to Ukraine, but it wasn't purely for leisure. Court documents state that the couple obtained fake Ukrainian passports and IDs, bank cards and SIM cards purchased on the dark web. They were allegedly making preparations for permanent relocation to Ukraine. In November 2021, it was time for the #Razzle wedding in California. Heather wore a gold gown and headpiece and entered the reception sitting in a gold throne carried by half a dozen friends. Razzlekhan stickers were given out as party favors. Heather then got on stage and started performing one of her rap songs, while her bridesmaids waved gold banana leaves. Ilya watched on proudly before getting on stage himself to perform a magic routine. At the end of the night, a bus picked up the bride and groom and their closest friends and drove them to a mansion where bartenders greeted them with drinks and hors d'oeuvres. The after party was even more extravagant than the actual wedding. After that night, the couple's friends started to wonder how they could afford it all. In the years after the 2016 Bitfinex hack, the feds didn't see any activity on the stolen bitcoins. The money just sat there, growing on the blockchain. The bitcoins first started to move in January 2017. Funds were being sent to a retailer on the dark web called Alphabay. The dark web is primarily used by individuals who wish to remain anonymous. Some goods that were commonly sold on Alphabay included narcotics, fake passports, and IDs, as well as hacking tools. The thieves use Alphabay to exchange bitcoins for a coin called Monero. Monero operates on its own privacy-enhanced blockchain, which means details of transactions can be hidden. The perfect currency for criminals who want to be untraceable. The thieves also opened a store on Alphabay and processed hundreds of, presumably, fake sales before shutting down. The revenue was then funneled into several different crypto wallets. Every crypto laundering trick in the book was used. One technique was mixing. They would take an assortment of clean cryptocurrency, scramble them with the stolen bitcoins, and redistribute them, so other people would end up with the stolen bitcoins. Another technique was a peel chain. The thieves would create new wallets and peel off small amounts of Bitcoin from the main wallet and deposit them into the new wallets, making the movement of the money harder to track. The thieves were also purchasing gold coins worth tens of thousands of dollars, as well as gift cards from Walmart, Uber, Hotels.com, and PlayStation. In February 2017, Ilya Lichtenstein's verified VCE5 account received a deposit. A month later, 3 more accounts were opened at a different exchange, referred to as VCE7. Over the next 4 years, $2.9 million worth of Bitcoin flowed into these accounts, and nearly all of it was converted into cash and transferred into American bank accounts. In July 2017, Alphabay's owner was arrested in Thailand, and the website was shut down by law enforcement. Alphabay's servers were seized, and suddenly, all of its users who believed they were operating anonymously had their data exposed to the feds. As we know, the Bitfinex thieves utilized Alphabay's services extensively to launder the stolen bitcoins. Gradually, the pieces of the highly complicated puzzle were falling into place. Investigators had been tracking the thieves' activities for 4 years. Every transaction was leading them closer to an identity and arrest. Then there would be one final step, the hard evidence of catching the thieves in possession of the crypto wallets. In 2021, federal agents began to monitor the apartment building at number 75 Wall Street. Over the course of a year, they would conduct stakeouts, show up in the middle of the night, take the elevator to the roof, and attempt to observe the thieves' online activities so they could be caught red-handed. For 4 years, the thieves were able to keep their identities hidden from the feds, but ironically, they had their lives on full display through their many social media accounts. It was 7 a.m. on the 5th of January 2022 when federal agents raided Heather and Ilya's apartment. Agents from the FBI, IRS, and Homeland Security took the freight elevator up, knocked on the front door, and were let inside. It was imperative that the thieves were caught off guard so they wouldn't have time to lock their electronics or destroy any evidence. As the feds rummaged through the apartment, Heather requested to get their cat Clarissa from the bedroom. As Heather crouched down to fetch Clarissa from under the bed, she grabbed her phone from her nightstand and desperately tried to lock it by repeatedly entering the wrong passcode. An agent saw what she was trying to do and wrestled the phone out of her hands. Altogether, the agents retrieved $40,000 in cash, an assortment of foreign currencies in plastic bags, and another bag labeled burner phone. There were over 50 tablets, phones, encrypted USB sticks, and other electronics in the apartment. They also found fake passports and IDs, and books that had been hollowed out to hide money and electronics. After the raid, Heather continued to post her usual content on Instagram and TikTok, as if nothing happened. But the evidence from the apartment was more than enough to definitively tie the online wallets to the Bitfinex hack. Investigators were able to decrypt several files in Ilya's cloud storage, including one file with a list of passwords. You don't need to be a cybersecurity expert to know how unwise it is to keep private keys to billions of dollars worth of crypto on a cloud drive. Investigators were able to connect the dots and access 94,000 stolen Bitcoin, now worth $3.6 billion. On the 7th of February 2022, Heather, Morgan, and Ilya Lichtenstein were arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit money laundering and conspiracy to defraud the United States. No one has yet been publicly blamed for the initial hack on Bitfinex, possibly due to lack of evidence. Heather and Ilya are both currently awaiting trial. Ilya has remained in federal custody since his arrest, as his ties to Russia have deemed him as a flight risk. Heather was freed on $3 million bond and is somehow now employed by an unknown tech firm. If convicted, they are each facing up to 25 years in prison. Prosecutors believe the couple still have access to around 25,000 bitcoins that have yet to be tracked down. They also believe that had the raid been weeks or even just days later, Heather and Ilya may have already jetted off to Ukraine with their laundered fortune. As for the 94,000 recovered bitcoins, they are still being held by the US government. Bitfinex announced they would be working with the Department of Justice to attempt to recover as much of the Bitcoin as possible, but the refund process will undoubtedly be complicated. BFX tokens were discontinued in April 2017 after they were all bought back by Bitfinex for their full value of $1 per token. Some users had sold off their BFX tokens or opted to trade them for recovery right tokens, which were essentially IOUs in the event the stolen money was recovered. But the fact remains that many Bitfinex customers suffered significant losses and are still waiting to be made whole again.